Tonight, it is Environmental Awareness Week here at DC Comics as Poison Ivy fails to stop a pharmaceutical company from poisoning the Gotham River. The Earth 2 squad are barely managing to hold together as they stop Solomon Grundy from destroying all life on Earth. And Swamp Thing is already too late as the rot has consumed everything he's ever held dear. I'm sorry, I'm getting some mixed messaging on the whole environmental aspect of that, but all that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 62 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it's a light week. It is a light week this week, which is great because we had 2 straight weeks of 2-hour plus long episodes and I could really use some downtime for myself. So it's all the same to you. I'm just going to jump into the comics and hold on. Wait, I've been passed a note here. It says that I have to do a promotional piece here for a new show. So, do you like collecting things like comics? Well, boy howdy, do I have a show for collectors like you. On the Mild Fuzz Movies channel, we have started a new show this week called The Collector's Cut, starring myself and Peter, where we will be discussing franchises and filmographies of different actors and directors on a weekly basis. Tune in to see if your favorite film makes the cut. So yeah, that's a thing. That was a lie. That was just off the cuff. This is my gas bill. So yeah, we are doing a new show over on the Mild Fuzz Movies channel where we're going to be doing just that thing that I described just now. So go ahead and check it out if you are interested. We have the first episode up as this episode airs of Dirty Harry, and we'll be covering the entire Dirty Harry series moving forward from there. Anyway, enough of the promotional stuff. Let me go ahead and tell you the reason why we're here. Comic books. And this week, November 7th, we have 12 of them, including the number 14 issues of Detective Comics, Batwing, Action Comics, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Stormwatch, Animal Man, and Swamp Thing, as well as the number 6 issues of Earth 2, World's Finest, GI Combat, and Dial H. Out of that, we have 3 or 4 different events, depending on how you count it. Green Lantern is, of course, part of the Rise of the Third Army. We have Green Arrow taking place in Hawkman Wanted, which is, I guess, technically an event. And Animal Man and Swamp Thing are both in Rot World, the Red and Green Kingdoms, respectively. So be sure to listen into those. Those will lead off our show. And then we'll get into the non-important comics. Though I do got to say, if you haven't been listening to Dial H, that one I really enjoyed this week. So be sure to tune into that. Anyway, enough rambling from me. I said this was a short week, and god damn it did I mean it. Let's get into the comics. Green Lantern number 14, written by Geoff Johns, art by Doug Mahnke. This is the next part of Rise of the Third Army, and it's kind of just like a holding pattern for an issue. So we left off last issue with Simon Baz being confronted by the Justice League because he is a suspected terrorist with a Green Lantern ring. It kind of is right up their alley, but this issue picks up with a basically recap of what's going on across the entire Green Lantern line, and it's just the Guardians talking to themselves saying like, hey, we totally killed Hal Jordan indirectly, we're taking care of all the other human lanterns, and we're sending our third army out to absorb all life in the universe, and only then will our mission be complete. And the first lantern is, of course, being held in his prison nearby, and he's like, excuse me, why? And they're like, what do you mean why? He's like, I mean, I get it. I get what you're doing. You're taking over the universe by getting rid of individual thoughts, but like, why though? And it's like, oh, because emotion is wrong and blah blah blah. And regardless, stop asking questions, First Lantern. Once our third army has taken over, we can finally extinguish you as a power source. Mwahaha. And then we cut back to Simon Baz, who is looking down the Justice League, and he's like, I'm sorry, do you expect me to fight you? Like, literally all of you would kick my ass, except maybe Batman. I might take Batman. And Aquaman's like, yeah, he's a Green Lantern. So at that point, they say, like, yeah, look, here's the thing. I don't know how I got the Green Lantern ring. I barely know how it works. All I know is I think it wants me to, like, find the person who actually planted the bomb, because that wasn't me. And he is totally willing and even suggests to use Wonder Woman's lasso to, like, confirm that he's telling the truth. And they're like, okay, yeah, sounds good, but we do, like, want you to depower and take off the ring first. He's like, I don't think I can do that. Like, I don't know if I can. It's just like, all right, it's fine, no problem, just take your time. And so he lets Batman come over and touch it, and as soon as Batman touches the ring, there's this construct that comes out with, like, Sinestro's face over and over, just saying, like, don't touch my ring, which the entire league thinks is a threat. And Simon's like, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to do that. But they're already on the chase. Simon conjures up a Green Lantern construct of a car, which he then drives away, which Flash is immediately right up next to his driver's side, being like, hey, look, you're running away. This isn't helping your case. Just pull over. We can sort this out. And Simon's like, nah, you've already made up your mind about me. And he, like, manages to dodge Flash and Superman by turning the car on, like, a literal dime. And as Flash catches up to him again, he's like, you do understand, like, I will always be able to catch up to you. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not trying to outrun you. I'm just trying to outthink you. And he uses the energy to make a whole bunch of decoy construct cars, enough that Superman and Flash are unable to keep track of it, and he manages to escape. So he makes his way to where he was going to meet up with his sister, and the sister is there waiting, and she's like, hey, was that the Justice League? And he's like, yeah, it's been a day. I'm sorry about that. And basically, the sister just opens up saying, like, look, I know you feel responsible for my husband's death, but, like, he's the one who chose to join in that street race. It's not your fault. He's the one who crashed. Just, I think you're being noble. That's the long and short of it. I think that what you're trying to do is being noble, even if you were stupid before. I got the address of the guy who previously owned that van, so maybe he can give you some answers. And Simon is on his way off. We see a brief little stitch of the Third Army absorbing some more people. I don't even know where they are. It just shows them there. And then we go to I think it was the Black Vault, that place where the First Lantern was originally imprisoned. And all the Guardians are still inside, like, okay, well, we currently have no way out. How are we supposed to do this? And they are listening to the vault door, where Black Hand is, of course, inside. And inside, Black Hand has resurrected the one Guardian who was already killed, named Regal. And Regal basically tells him, like, oh, we were meant to stay in here for eons. There is no way out. We have to watch over the First Lantern, but now they have the First Lantern, so we're just stuck in here forever. So Black Hand now understands what's going on, at least. And then we cut over to Hal and Sinestro, who are both in just this black void, and Hal thinks he sees something ahead, and there's a figure in some tattered robes saying, like, ah, Sinestro, it is you. Come, you must pay for your crime. And Hal's like, what did you do this time? Bwomp, bwomp, bwomp. This issue felt pretty much like a holding pattern. I mean, yes, we had Simon meet up with the Justice League, which I guess is an interesting meetup. It is showing that he is able to hold his own. It's a good character development thing, but in terms of all the other plots, it kind of just feels like we're just staying in place. So, not the best issue, but it's not bad by any means. The art's fantastic the whole way through, and it does further Simon's plot and a little bit of Hal and Sinestro's plot, though this is, I think, the first time we checked in with them in like 2-3 issues. So it's slow going on all fronts. I'm curious to see how fast we're actually going to make it through this, and when we're going to get to actually meeting up with the Third Army in terms of Simon. or getting Hal and Sinestro back, because both those seem very far away from their endpoints. So we'll see when we get there. Overall, though, this one is probably like a 6.5. It's not bad by any means. It does just feel, though, pretty unnecessary and like it could have been sped up and folded into a different issue. So not bad, just I wanted a little bit more. Green Arrow number 14, written by Nocenti, art by Freddie Williams II. This is the next part of Hawkman Wanted, a tie-in with Hawkman and ostensibly Deathstroke. So last issue we had Oliver Queen coming back from China in order to get his company back. It was a whole thing. And then he came across Hawkman being chased by other Hawk people, and it's like, what's happening here? So, Hawkman is, of course, being chased because he is wanted for the murder of the Emperor of Thanagar, his kind of brother-in-law. Check out Hawkman 13, but this issue, Green Arrow jumps in because they see that Hawkman is holding his girlfriend, Emma, and just like, oh, there's a human in the mix, and it looks like it's 3-on-1, so I'm going to root for the underdog. That's what my gut says. So he jumps into the mix, throws out an arrow that causes like a million little barbed spikes to attach themselves to the other Thanagarians, and they all get electrified because of it. And Green Arrow takes a second and it's just like, hey, did you actually commit murder? And he's like, no, I'm innocent. And he's like, well, that's what a guilty person would say. So how can I trust you? And he's just like, I don't know. Just trust me. We have no choice here. So he's like, look, I'm going to take the girl. I'm going to get her up onto my jet, and then we can fight these things together because you're kind of bogged down with her right now. So Hawkman's like, no, I don't want to leave her. And Emma's like, I'll literally be right over there. Just let me go. So the other Thanagarians show up before she's able to make it the whole way up, but she is still holding her own with her own little battle axe. And it's just an extended fight scene where the narrator, who I don't think is literally either of them, is just saying like, hey, this is war. This is truly what a soldier feels, and blah, blah, blah. So Arrow gets a call from the flyer of the jet saying like, hey, we're getting the war room ready back home. If you can get a sample of their armor, then we can find something to take them down. And he's like, all right, cool, we'll do. But before they can do any of that, Thanagarians just fly up into the sky away. And he's like, cool, they're leaving. And Hawkman's like, no, I'm not sure how I know this, but they're getting ready for a dive bomb. And again, not sure how I know this, but it will tear us limb from limb with the speeds and the power they can get. And of course, they are dive bombing. So Green Arrow ends up dropping like a whole quiver full of arrows. The one he does manage to get is a net arrow, which he fires across to Hawkman. They extend the net, and all the Hawk people fall into it, and once again get electrified. The guy flying the jet, I think his name's Jimmy. If not, I'm calling him Jimmy. He's firing a pistol trying to defend Emma, who's like dangling out from the plane. Thanagarian cuts her line. Hawkman gets knocked, like bumped by the jet, so he's basically falling out of the air as well. But Green Arrow does manage to catch Emma before it's too late. Or no, sorry, the Thanagarians catch her and take her away. And Green Arrow's like, it's too late, Hawkman. They're gone. So then he starts just collapsing down into the sea. And he's like, dude, you are literally too exhausted to function. We need to take you somewhere to like calm down. And he's like, I gotta fight. They took Emma. He's like, okay, well, we're still going to do that. So they take him to the war room, which at this point is just like an abandoned warehouse that I guess is whatever, because as it turns out, all that thing with getting his company and his money back, turns out that the Chinese government just blocked it from happening. So he's still not rich. So they're stuck here. Green Arrow talks to Hawkman about all this stuff going on with him, and he's just like, oh, I'm not a murderer. They just want me for my nth metal armor. And he's like, dude, I don't really care, but you're in my city, and I don't want to caught in the middle of a intergalactic war. And Hawkman's like, fair enough. And then he's like, but I have to go find Emma. And Green Arrow's like, why do you care so much about her? And he's like, you don't care about someone more than you do yourself? And he's like, no, I can't afford to. We're all so gritty and no hope of finding love. So anyway, his tech guy, Jax, comes up with a drone beetle thing where it's an acid that corrodes pretty much anything it touches, but he does it in the form of two different chemicals that when they touch will become an acid. So that way, it doesn't corrode whatever is holding it. And they're like, okay, cool. And then Jack says, this really would work better, Green Arrow, if you could fly. What about that glider arrow from like forever ago? And he's like, that thing's a toy. I'm not going to use that. And he's like, well, you're going to have to try. So he hops onto his glider arrow and starts gliding through Seattle. He's like, boy, I sure do love this city. And then he gets a call from Susie Ming from last arc. And he's like, hey, what's up with my stocks or whatever? And he's like, oh, yeah, no, they left China. They're somewhere in Seattle, which I don't think she understands how a digital transfer of stocks doesn't just end up somewhere in Seattle, but regardless, whatever. So yeah, at that point, they just talk philosophically for like a second about I genuinely don't know what. And Oliver lands and turns out of his Green Arrow gear and walks to a bar to talk to Emerson, the guy who ran his company into the ground. And it's just like, hey, Emerson, you ran my company in the ground. And Emerson's like, psh, you did that yourself. You literally were never around the whole time. He's like, dude, you took over the company after I left for a few weeks. The hell is wrong with you? And he's like, well, maybe you'll see one day, Oliver, that it is all your fault. And he's like, all right, whatever, bye. So anyway, fight scene kicks off. They move up the coast to try to find the Hawk people. They manage to come across them at a bonfire, and they just, from above, start raining down this acid, which corrodes their armor and like keeps them stuck in place. But one of them was out on patrol. He comes back, and he's like, my men, what have you done? And he's like, we didn't kill them. They're literally just right there. And he's like, this is a war crime. And it's like, you literally have stolen an innocent civilian. That's more of a war crime. And he's just like, psh, whatever. So at that point, Hawkman throttles the guy, saying like, give me the location of your queen. And he's like, I will not betray her. He's like, yeah, you will. And he's like, yeah, I will. So he gets the location. They make their way deeper into the city. And Green Arrow's like, all right, and you're sure this woman can end the conflict? And he's like, yeah, she's literally the cause for it. And Green Arrow's like, all right, I'll trust you this time, Hawkman, but you're still not good in my book. Got it? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So that's where we leave off. Next issue is Deathstroke. I can see a few ways we could get into Deathstroke here. We'll see which one of them happens, but I didn't expect this to be so tightly knit of a Green Arrow Hawkman thing. I thought it would just be Green Arrow helps him out and then just dips by the end of the issue, but hey, whatever. Dialogue was really painful, and nothing against Freddie Williams' art because I did enjoy it in Captain Atom, but it doesn't really fit the street hero vibe that Green Arrow has. This is very strange looking, I guess I would say, in a lot of panels. It's more sci-fi than it is this, and the colorist is not doing any great favors either. It's not playing into the weirdness of it. It's played very straight. So sometimes you'll get like some, I don't know, just some weirdness from more zoomed out shots. Overall, I think this is like a 5.5. It's okay, but like this event so far is nothing save for an excuse to cross over into a couple different series that probably weren't selling so well. So overall, meh in general, but hey, we'll see how Deathstroke managed to turn it out because that's been doing so much better. That was sarcasm. Animal Man number 14, written by Geoff Lemire, art by Steve Pugh and Timothy Green II. This is the next part of Rot World, the Red Kingdom side of things. And the last issue we had Animal Man getting to the Red, Constantine berating him, and back before Rot World, we see that both her brother and her mother, Maxine's that is, have been infected by the rot. So this issue picks up with the grandmother telling her like, oh, get back, stay away. and the mother launches after her grandmother and basically turns them all into agents of the rot. And Maxine is, of course, distraught as she looks on. She's like, no, please stop. And we find out that these are the hunters, basically given new form, and they're coming back after them. And Socks is like, all right, Maxine, we got to go. We got to run. Let's get out of here. So they start running. Cut to Rot World, and Buddy's basically explaining, like, yeah, no, we were trapped in the rot for some amount of time. I don't know how long, but when we came back, this is, by the way, where is Swamp Thing? What happened to him? And they were like, oh, I guess you guys must have split up. Like, you were drawn slightly closer to the red. Maybe he was drawn slightly closer to the green, in which case we know kind of where he is. And Constantine points out that if both of you are here, then maybe we have a chance to finally beat the rot. And immediately Buddy's like, fight for what? My whole family is gone. What's worth fighting for? And Black Orchid starts to say something, but then boom, giant explosion. They're being attacked by the agents of the rot. And more specifically, it's Felix Faust, who is a magician sorcerer guy who made a deal with the rot to basically not be turned, but to be a force for them with his magic powers. And inside the group, we see a rot turned grifter, Hawk and Dove, and Deathstroke are there as well. So at this point, giant fight breaks out, and Buddy is just basically trying to fight through. And Felix is like, Animal Man, we found you at last. How fantastic, or whatever. And Animal Man's asking questions like, he's not an agent of the rot. What's going on? Why doesn't he look all rotten? And they explained how apparently a bunch of people managed to turn to the rot before they were infected. So they're now living their best lives, I guess. So yeah, fight continues and the whole thing's going on. Buddy momentarily asks about Black Orchid's power set. And like, are you with the red or the green? And she explains, like, I kind of am a combo of both. It's very complicated. I'll get into it later. So fight continues on, and they manage to take out pretty much all the agents of the rot. And Constantine gets the upper hand on Felix, saying, like, whoa, hey, that attack, I mean, it was nothing. I'm just here to send a message. Animal Man, Buddy Baker, we have your daughter. Come and get her. And then he just vaporizes into dust or whatever. He's still alive. It was intentional. And Buddy's like, son of a bitch. Constantine chimes in like, that was an obvious trap. And he's like, yeah, it is, but I gotta go get my daughter anyway. And basically, he's just like, no, Constantine tells him you can't go out there. You will actually die. And then everybody else just starts reasoning like, okay, but here's the thing. If they keep launching that scale of attacks on us, we're going to die in here anyway. So why don't we... And you said that if he can meet up with Swamp Thing, then maybe he'll be good. So what if we just go get Swamp Thing and then go get his daughter? How about that? That sounds like a plan. So at that point, they're like, yeah, no, we'll leave. But who's going to protect all the people that are still alive here in the red? And... I forget his name, but the shepherd, I think it was, he steps up and he's like, we were kind of protecting the red before any of you showed up. We can still do it now, especially if they're not going to be attacking for Buddy anymore. So, yeah, we're fine. Go on your merry adventure. And it's like, all right, fine, whatever. Constantine goes begrudgingly because why not? So then we go back to before Rot World, and Maxine is just freaking out. She's like, I gotta go save my family. I don't want to run anymore. I can't continue on without him. And Sokka is just basically telling her like, hey, I don't know how this is gonna go, but you are the best chance for survival right now. So are you willing to kill your own family? And she's like, no, of course not. And he's like, okay, that's fine. But then we need to keep running. We literally cannot stop until we find someone who can help us. So they just start running as they hear them approach. And they head into town. And as they get in there, they see the entire place has already been ransacked. Like, the rot has moved through and is taken over. And Sox points out, like, okay, in terms of allies, we're looking for maybe, like, Constantine. Maybe we could find Woodrue. And at this point, Maxine hears a noise. And as she goes inside a nearby diner, there's a boy in there. And she's like, oh, hey, boy, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not one of the rot. My name's Maxine. I'm Avatar of the Red. I'm here to save the day. Who are you? And he's like, oh, my name's William Arcane. So, not good news. We cut back into Raw World and we see that the group is taking a break at night. They've got a couple people standing guard, and Constantine's just talking about like, oh, I got what I would kill for some tobacco right now. If only I was over at the green, they could grow some for me. But before they're able to do anything, everyone is seemingly hit by some form of like psychic attack, except for Steel, who is of course immune to it. And everyone collapses to the ground, and they're surrounded by a bunch of gorillas. And wouldn't you know it, this is New Gorilla City, ruled by Grodd. And also, the Brain and Monsieur Mala are there, who I don't think we've met before this point, but they're also in this city. So, yay, we got Grodd. I mean, it works. It makes sense that they be here, I guess. But either way, it's a little bit of a surprise. Curious to see how they escape it. I like this one. I think that it does a great job pushing forward the story of saying, okay, we're on a quest. We are going to find Swamp Thing again. We're going to take on the Rot, and we are going to get our lives back into some level of normalcy. It doesn't say that they're going to get their family back, but there is the hint that Maxine is still alive. So that's something at least. Overall, I give this one... It's kind of just starting the story, so I think I give it a 7.5. It would be a little bit higher if it was, like a capper or something like that, but it is just kind of setting up the like reasons as to why they have to do the thing instead of just staying in the red the whole time. Overall, though, it is great. It is fantastic arc, and I've been loving this book since the beginning, so that's no real surprise. So 7.5 for this. We'll see how the Red Kingdom continues. Swamp Thing number 14, written by Scott Snyder, art by Yanick, Paquette. This is the next part of Rot World, the Green Kingdom. And last issue we left off with the Green being attacked by the rot-infested Teen Titans. And yeah, we're just picking up from there. So we start up with a nightmare sequence that apparently Alec Holland used to have, where he would wake up in a dark like tunnel. He would be made of leaves. He'd be a boy. And then he would reach this door, this big door at the end of the dark hallway. And he was like, oh, but I knew, even without being in there, I knew what was behind that door. So anyway, the fight is still continuing on. Swamp Thing is fighting against Superboy specifically. And he's trying to reason with him like, Superboy, if you're still in there, I'm not your enemy. Please stop doing this. But of course, he's not in there. So he's getting absolutely trounced by the Teen Titans and is bleeding immensely. And the Parliament of Trees kicks in and is just like, hey, Alec, they're gone. Like, literally, they're just all rot. Please stop trying to reason with them. Also, you've never actually fought with the Parliament, like, right here. Like, you never fought in our midst. You've always fought from a distance. So we're able to give you our full power. What are you going to do with it? And Swamp Thing grows to this enormous size and just basically stomps all of the Titans beneath his feet. And Poison Ivy's like, some of them might have survived. And he's like, you're welcome to check the bottom of my foot for that. And it's like, nah, that's fine. So he's like, Poison Ivy's like, all right, look, we need to get back to the stalk. Make sure that nobody gets in. And Swamp Thing just stops it right there. Like, nah, first you're going to tell me what happened to Abigail Arcane. And then we see Abby's side of things where she also had the same dream. She'd going down this dark hallway. She was a girl made of bones, like a skeleton. And she'd come up and meet with Alec Holland, the boy made of leaves. And they come to this door and they both push it open. And then they came to the realization that this wasn't just a dream. There's something real about it. And then at that point we see the plane Abby was in crashed, as we know of that at last issue. And turns out she survived. She just crawled away from the wreckage with no injuries and made her way back to the city of Blestemat, where is the city she grew up, because we saw all about it in the Swamp Thing annual, which takes place smack dab in the middle of this issue. And we see her walking into town, and then they say, like, no, that's impossible. Abby was alive. Like, it was literally just Swamp Thing annual. Like, this is where it takes place, that whole story. And they come to the end of the story, and it's just like, so, Arcane took her. Well, I guess I'm going to go take my revenge. And basically the Parliament's like, no, dude, like the Green is here. You got to protect us. Like, don't go out there. You'll die out there. The farther you get away from us, the weaker you get as well. I hope you know that. And he's like, dude, you guys have constantly been telling me to be your, like, savior, your soldier. You're just talking about stalling and buying for time. Like, I could go out there and kick his ass. Let's go do that. And the Parliament's like, all right, yeah, that sounds reasonable. That's fine. Ivy, you'll be watching over us. You'll stay here. You'll make sure we're safe. But yeah, Alec, you can go. Maybe we misjudged you. And so he's like, all right, peace. I'm going to go kill Arcane now. And Boston Brand, Deadman's like, hey, I'll go with you. I'm genuinely going to be of no help during the fight because I can't possess the rot people. But there are pockets of like safety, and you're going to need someone who knows what's up. Also, there's rumor there's a weapon that was being developed in Gotham right before the fall that could take out the rot on like contact. So maybe we should go for that. And he's just like, all right, cool, let's go. So they start like sauntering away, and we go back to Abby and see that she is still making her way through the town, but there is like literally nobody there. And she's like, I never wanted to come back here, but here I am. Gotta head back to the castle up on the mountaintop. So as they're walking farther and farther from the Green, Alec's giant form completely collapses. It's not something that can be sustained. As well as the little, of course it is, of his wings would also deteriorate if he tried to fly. So he genuinely has to walk. But Boston points out that there is a river nearby that is just horrible looking, absolutely disgusting. But he uses the bits and pieces of his giant form to make a makeshift boat. And he's like, yeah, that genuinely took a whole lot out of me, so I probably am going to be pretty useless coming up here as well. And Boston's like, fair enough. Hopefully it'll just be a lazy river trip and nothing will get in our way. So, cut one more time over to Abby, and turns out that as she's approaching the castle up on the mountaintop, she sees literally all the villagers are up there. But she doesn't want to be seen, of course, so she takes a little shortcut that she knew as a kid that involves her sidling along the edge of the bridge that everyone is on. And it's like 1,000-foot drop, but she's like, I know it's not going to hurt me because it's me. I'm the one that they need. So she starts making her way over, and she comes across a cave on the other side. Meanwhile, we see that Swamp Thing, as they're going down this river, they're pretty much having the fight constantly. Things are coming out of the river and attacking them nonstop, and he's forced to impale them and throw them back into the river as they just make their way down. And Boston basically, once the fighting calms for a second, he's like, hey, I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry about Abby. Like, it's a lot. And he's like, there's no need to be sorry. He's like, no. I understand what it's like to lose someone. And he's like, no, you don't understand. You don't have to apologize because I know Abby's still alive. And he's like, oh, you're in denial. And he's like, no. I can feel her. I can feel her somewhere in the world. It's faint, but it's there. And I know that. And I'm going to get her. And he's like, well, I hope you're right. So then we see Abby, who has finally made her way to the other side. She enters in the cave, and waiting for her right there is her uncle, Anton Arcane, and Swamp Thing simultaneously, but, differentiated by a year, is attacked by a beast from the water, just like a kraken-looking thing that comes up, swallows his ship alive, and out of the water comes Aquaman's trident. But it is not held by Aquaman. It is held by little William Arcane, who has apparently taken over the seas because that's just his realm now. So, yeah, it's good. It's a solid issue. I think that it sets up the reasons of, okay, here's why Swamp Thing's leaving. Here's his goal specifically. Sounds like they're making their way to Gotham first, and then they're going to be heading off to take on Arcane. We see that Abby, to some extent, has still survived. Obviously, that was set a year in the past of where Swamp Thing is now, so there's a chance that she's still dead. But it's an interesting look and to see these parallel stories being told. Overall, I'd say this is probably this is a 7.5. I liked it. I think that it's a good reveal at the end there of William Arcane being the ruler of the Dead Seas. And literally having Aquaman's trident just gives him a little bit extra, because his whole thing was he literally could not interact with the green. So in a rot world, he'd be more or less safe, but he's extra safe in the water. So I like it. I think it's a nice issue. I think the art's fantastic the whole way through. Huge Swamp Thing. You feel it. You feel his size to it. And I like the way the Titans are portrayed as well. It's just good read all through. I'm really enjoying Rot Worlds, especially from Swamp Thing's perspective. Detective Comics number 14, written by John Layman, art by Jason Fabok. So last issue we left off with the Penguin taking Bruce Wayne's, I don't know, donation or spot or whatever, of naming the new wing of a hospital after his mother. So also there was a thing of him hiring assassins to kill Bruce Wayne. But after this was all done, he's like, oh, call off the assassins, no big deal. But the assassins don't actually ever stop. So, yeah, still kind of a big deal. So, one's attacking Bruce Wayne with a flaming sword. He managed to duck out of the way, and his monologue's like, if I was a half second slower, Bruce Wayne would be decapitated right now. So he keeps on trying to, like, miss and move out of the way in a way that looks lucky, but is actually him trying. Like, he knows he can't outwardly beat this guy by being lucky. He's just trying to stall and escape via that method. And Cobblepot's talking to his second in command, Ogilvy, and he's like, I wanted these guys canceled. I'll have your head for this. And he's like, sir, I understand you're upset, but maybe you could turn this into an opportunity. And we see as Bruce Wayne's thinking of a plan and like trying to dodge him, Cobblepot just walks up and sinks the stabby part of his cane into the back of the assassin's head, and just like, you're welcome, Mr. Wayne. And next morning, all over the news is that Cobblepot saved Bruce Wayne's life. And we see down in the Batcave, Bruce and Damian are both looking up at the screens, and Damian's like, wow, half second slower and Bruce Wayne would have lost his head. And Bruce is like, this wasn't even that close. Shut up. So Damian's like, man, if I had known that party was going to be that intense, I probably would have joined. You made it sound so boring. And basically gets into it of just like, so what are you going to do to stop Penguin? And Bruce is like, I got to play the slow game. Someone like Penguin, like, I can't just go after him. It would actually make things worse. So I got to do something that I just got to slowly like bide my time in that sort of way. So then we get a cut to, I guess, sometime later where Batman is all binded up in vines and Poison Ivy is kissing him. So yeah, and he's like, oh, Poison Ivy's trying to control me, but she can't. I'm not going to fall for it. And we see that he's being led into this building by Poison Ivy, and he's like mentally trying to overcome her, I don't know, pheromones or whatever she uses to control. So then we go to, again, earlier that morning, and apparently there's been an attack on a couple buildings throughout Gotham, and Damian suggests, oh, maybe this is Penguin still, and he's like, no, it's not Penguin, it's not Joker, it's none of them, it's Poison Ivy, because they're all linked to attacks on the environment, so this is eco-terrorism. And they make a point of saying, like, isn't she in the Birds of Prey? Isn't she in that book? And it's like, yes, but if you've been reading Birds of Prey, she's kind of on the outs with them right now because she poisoned them. So, yeah, she may be a hero, but she's kind of on the wrong path right now. So at that point, they talk a little bit more about, like, okay, what are we going to go just take down Poison Ivy? Like, we're going to stop her? Because as it turns out, one of the buildings that she's attacking is actually belong to Penguin. So it's like, this kind of sounds like a win-win if we just let her do her own thing. Like, Penguin will be that. And Bruce is like, no, we got to do it the right way. I know, shut up. So he goes down to the place that they are pretty sure that she's going to attack next, the pharmaceutical company. And he just comes up and is like, Ivy, we need to talk. And she's already got his car binded up in vines as well as him as well. And she plants a kiss on him to try to control him. And we see in her mind or in his mind, like, he is really fighting it and he's seeing a lot of stuff that's not there, including Natalia, who I can't remember if that was this book or a different one. I think that was Dark Knight. That was Natalia, was his love interest. I don't know. Regardless, they make their way into this pharmaceutical company, and Poison Ivy's just like, just let me blow this place up. Like, they're poisoning this place. It sucks. It's not doing anything good for people. Just let me blow it up. And she reveals, like, yeah, I know I'm not controlling you, Batman. Like, do you care to tell me why I'm not able to control you this time? And he's like, no. And then we get the breakdown that it turns out that he's using some sensors in his cowl to basically cause little mini seizures every time his mind starts to, like, drift and, like, be controlled. And that resets his brain long enough to stay in it. And it gives him a hell of a headache, and he's having, like, constant seizures, but, you know, he's in control. So Poison Ivy's just like, so, are you going to help me out blowing this place up? And he's like, no, you're better than that, Ivy. Stop doing this. And she just lands a punch on him because he's too slow to react because of, you know, the constant seizures. And at this point, it's just a fight scene between the two of them. But it's revealed to us as the readers that Batman notices a bit too late that there is a gas canister hooked up to a timer that is also hooked up to some jumper cables on the metal grate that they're fighting on. And Batman sees all this and is like, Ivy, this is a trap. Something's going on. And puts together that it's most likely Penguin doing it, because this is, of course, his place. So at that point, he tries to warn Ivy. Ivy doesn't react in time. She gets electrocuted because she's immune to the gases. Batman gets gassed because his suit makes him immune to the electricity. And they both get knocked out. And someone comes in, a shadowy figure. Turns out it's Ogilvy, Penguin's right-hand man. Comes up, picks up Poison Ivy and carries him out. And says, like, well, Batman, I would like nothing more than to attack you today, but you're not on today's docket, so you get a pass. Next time, Batman. And he just leaves Batman there. So then Batman starts coming to sometime later, and there's a man standing behind him saying, like, Ivy, where is she? And Batman is immediately grabbed up because turns out it's Clayface, who is also being controlled by Poison Ivy. And he just starts screaming, what have you done to my wife? So, yeah, there's that. Okay, so while this does, of course, tie into the overarching Penguin story, I'm sure, it does feel, at least in this issue, so enormously detached that I can't really place where they're going with it. Because now we've got not only Penguin, not only his right-hand man, who's, of course, doing his own thing, we also have Poison Ivy and Clayface, who are apparently in a relationship, or at least Clayface thinks that. I don't know. It's a lot going on. Art-wise, looks fantastic. Love every second of it. But the writing itself is just a little bit unfocused. I feel like it's all working towards a greater purpose, but I'm not sure where we're going yet. Because Penguin's made it clear that he wants to go on the straight and narrow, but none of this quite strikes me as that. So, I don't know. We'll see where it goes. Overall, though, this is probably a 7. I do enjoy it. I think it's a solid issue. I just really wish that it had a really super solid story to back up Jason Fabok's art. Maybe it does. Maybe we'll get there. But right now it is just a bit too unclear to me as to where we're actually going with this. Batwing number 14, written by Judd, Winick, art by Marcus Toe. This picks up where last issue left off, of Batwing coming in to help the vigilante known as Dawn fight against the Finders cult, because, yeah, why not? But first we have a flashback years ago to the children's home that David was in after he escaped from the warlords, and a young woman wakes up screaming named Rachel, and David comes in, calms her down, saying, like, hey, you were having a nightmare. It's over now. You're fine. And she's like, when are the nightmares ever going to stop? When am I going to stop seeing these horrible images of the things I've been through? And he's like, they're probably not going to stop. They're going to keep going. But, I mean, they do end. The nightmares do end. So, at this point, we go back into the fight. Batwing and Dawn are fighting side by side, and Batwing launches a distraction so that they can manage to get the innocents out of there, and he launches like a light thing from his suit that blinds all the finders. But before he can get too far, he ends up getting controlled once again by the finders group. And so he then starts attacking Dawn, and Dawn's like, "You gotta snap out of it." And she pulls out a necklace from her pocket, puts it onto Batwing, and does some weird light show thing that manages to snap him out of it. And at that exact moment, the police all arrive, guns drawn, just like, "Oh, freeze everyone." And we see, what's her name? The police officer lady that David likes, who was looking for her niece. She's leading the thing, and she sees her niece in the crowd, and she's like, Leela, come back, it's me." We cut to Father Lost, who's like, "Well, things have gotten very complicated today. I need all of you to come home." And all of them immediately just recognize, like, "Oh, come home." They all start running away, including Leela, who manages to escape. And Batwing manages to trap a couple of them, but of course not all of them. So then we cut to Father Lost's lair, and he sees all the people who managed to come back, and he's like, "All I asked of you was to kill the woman who was giving us so many problems, and you couldn't even do that right. Well, that's just going to have to be fixed by me personally." So he takes one of his followers and like does the whole Temple of Doom thing where he just literally rips out his heart from its rib cage and leaves him sitting there. So then we cut to Batwing's HQ, and it's just like, okay, we did some research as to who Dawn is, and turns out it's Rachel. And Matthew's like, how does someone go from a children's home to hunting a mad cult? And David's like, isn't that exactly what I did? And it's like, yeah, but that's different. She's got like mystical swords and stuff. How did that happen? Just like, I don't know. But we do know that she managed to go work for the government for a while. So let's find out the contacts there. So Batwing goes and talks to someone named Miss Kotala, who worked with Rachel at some point, and basically just does the bat enhanced interrogation where he just dangles her from really high up asking questions. And turns out that the whole reason that they left was, or that they are going their different ways and that she's currently on the run, is that back when they were all working as like a government secret covert ops thing, they went to a house to investigate this cult before they got any sort of real finding. And when they came into the house, they saw that like this people were here and they had these mystical powers. They took out 3 of the 6 members of the team, and then all of them committed suicide. So it was enough to really freak them out. But Rachel took it to heart and like is now trying to take them apart. So we cut to a ruins where I guess the finders are doing their next sacrifice. And as they're about to kill a young woman, Dawn, of course, comes in, starts slashing everybody up, just like, "Oh, everyone here is coming home with me." But it was a trap. They were just waiting for her to arrive before they started firing on her. So she starts trying to take cover. Batwing, of course, shows up, gives her a little bit of extra time to escape. And as she jumps over one of the ruins, standing there just waiting for her is Father Lost, who's like, "Hello, Dawn, it's been too long." And he takes a knife and just shivs her, just right into her stomach. And she is bleeding out on the ground as Batwing just does the whole Batman Begins thing and just screams, "Rachel!" So, yeah. I like it. I think it's, I don't know. Here's the thing, is that they're purposely keeping this cult mysterious in terms of like what it's able to do, how it got its powers, blah, blah, blah. Father Lost especially being a mysterious character. And there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of mystery. I think that it's fine, but it's hard to toe that line of where does the mystery stop and just being an unfocused story begin, I guess. It's a line this one I feel is dancing around a little bit, where we keep on doing this thing where Batwing keeps on getting possessed, and maybe it's going to come back in like a major way. Maybe it's going to influence a later part of the story, or maybe it's just kind of like a stalling tactic and it's just kind of part of the unfocused story aspect of things. I'm not sure. where this one falls yet, which kind of makes me think more unfocused, because if I'm not sure, then part of the story is not being told correctly, or well enough, I should say. But it's not bad. It's by no means a bad story. I think that it's got a lot of interesting things, a whole cult human trafficking thing going on. All of them interesting topics that I think this Batwing run has done a good job dealing with the sort of similar ways of. So in general, I think I would give this one I give it like a 7. I think it's good. 6.5. I think it's fine. I think it's a good one, but it is still an issue of if it doesn't figure out what it's trying to do quickly here, I'm losing interest more than anything else. It just doesn't feel like we're actually working towards anything. So 6.5, see where we go. Action Comics number 14, written by Grant Morrison, art by Rags Morales. This is just a Doctor Who story. That's it. So we're on Mars, and something is attacking a settlement that I guess is on Mars, trying to like terraform or something like that. And they are all making their way into a dome for their own safety. And it turns out that it is the Metalex that Superman has been battling for a while now, which is just sentient construction equipment, I guess. So they scream out, oh, they're tearing down everything and rebuilding it into something else. Can anyone save us? And that ring goes all the way out from Mars to Earth, where Clark has already zipped off as Superman to go and save them. And it's a nice little segment here of him. You see him like passing by an airplane, going out the atmosphere and making his way to Mars. So all the Metalex are reconstructing the stuff into different things, and we see a parent is like comforting their child up here, which I don't know why there's a child on Mars, but regardless there is. And they're like, okay, our life support is crashing. They've already taken apart the power core. Like, we don't have more than an hour up here and nobody's coming to save us. And as they do that, we hear all this crumbling and crashing outside, and of course it's Superman showing up to save the day. And Superman makes his way into the enclosure, and they inform him, just like, yeah, they showed up before dawn. They're just building whatever it is out there. And he's like, yeah, they're Metalex. I've run into them before. We can go out there. I will stop them, and I will safely get you home. And they explain, look, we had like 2 other people that were in a different dome. They're still over there. We got to get to them. Got to save them. One of them is the kid's dad. And also, someone swears that they saw a third person, but like, everyone's accounted for. So might want to look into that. But Superman's like, no problem. I will go out there and I will take care of this. And one of them points out, like, hey, based off of what Superman was saying, they're here to basically terraform planets for a race of beings that is no longer in existence, and they're on their way to Earth. So, you know, Mars is there. But if they just explain to the Metalex that they're all working for the same thing, maybe they'll stop. So Superman's like, okay, we'll do. And they make their way out there. Metalex start firing on Superman. Superman just starts like tearing a couple of them apart. He does that thing where like he punches one of them and then like blows on his knuckles because he's just so cool. And then we see after he has destroyed one of them, I guess he talks to them and says, hey, we all want the same thing here. And he manages to make his way over to the other dome, save the other 2 people. And he's like, yeah, explain to them we're all just terraforming this stuff. It's great. However, the reason that these terraformers were sent out is because they were running from something called the Multitude, which I have been warned about in other things. Turns out that Jor-El was the only person who had ever repelled the Multitude, and it turns out they're on their way here to, like, Earth. So that's, you know, we're getting back to that doomed list planet thing. So at that point, all the signals are getting louder, and it's just like, okay, so how do we beat the Multitude? And Superman's like, I don't know, but my dad did it, and I'm just going to figure it out as I go. So Superman goes back outside, tells them all to stay inside, you know, fully armed to make sure that they're safe. And we see that the Multitude descends on Mars, and they all look like angels. So a bunch of angels just come out attacking Superman, and there are literally like hundreds of thousands of them, and Superman is unable to take them all on. The Metalex now working with Superman, start attacking the Angels as well. And it's like, okay, well, Superman's fighting Angels with some sentient construction work. Yep, that sounds about right. On Mars, can't forget that part. Finally, Superman, he gets a second to get away. He gets back into the dome, and he's like, okay, I'm still only just one guy, and there are like literally hundreds of thousands of them. And one of the ladies inside is like, Superman, you promised us you'd be safe, or we'd be safe. You gotta keep your promise, Superman. We gotta find a way out of this. And Superman's like, okay, yeah, sorry, I'll figure it out. And he sits there and he thinks for a second, and he's like, now wait a minute. I have a fork and a piece of paper. This fork is three-dimensional, but when I push it into the paper, a two-dimensional object, it leaves 4 imprints. One object in lower dimensions can be seen as multiple objects. This must mean they're higher dimensional objects, like 5th dimensional or something. And he reasons that they can use the power supply of the Mars base to shock the higher dimension and it like take them all out at once. But it would require them basically like fixing all of physics. So sure, whatever. They do it. Superman takes them all out. He uses his own body as a conduit and they're all gone. And so they all make their way out into the Martian atmosphere so that Superman can get them off planet. And it's just like, oh, hey, there's that third guy you were talking about. He's just struggling in the rubble over there. Let me get him out. And he pulls him out. And it turns out it's that little impish dude that has been showing up throughout the entire series. And Superman recognizes him. He's like, wait a minute, you're Vindictivix, aren't you? And he's like, yeah, I am. And you hurt my hand with that electric thing. I was the multitude, get it? And he reveals how he's been planning this for so long to like take down Superman. And then immediately he just turns to all the other astronauts, all the people Superman was just trying to save, and just melts them into a pile of goo. And it's just like, yeah, I can just do this, including the kid. So yeah, what are you going to do, Superman? And Vindictivix is like, you started all this. You think I'm scared of you? I'll show you fear. And he transforms into this like giant devil demon looking guy. And he's like, Superman, I have been laying traps for you since before you were even born. I'm about to set you up for the fall of a lifetime. Prepare to lose. So, yeah. This feels like it's such a strange issue to be the culmination of like 5 different plots. We had the Multitude, we had Vindictivix, we had the Metalex. Like, all this finally just came to a head in some random ass issue where Superman gets called up to Mars. I mean, it's fine. It's a good issue, I think. It's just so strange that all these different things just coalesce here. Do I like it? Yes. I think that it's a solid issue. Again, it is literally just like 2 or 3 different Doctor Who stories all just combined into one. It's not bad, like they're good Doctor Who stories, but I can literally point out which ones they are. So overall, though, I'm going to say it's a 7.5. It's fine. I mean, here's the thing, is that these things felt like big deals. Like the Multitude is coming and this doomed planet list. Like all these were things that were being hyped up literally from the beginning. And Superman just kind of like is, okay, I dealt with it. And sure, we still got the Vindictivix thing, but that feels like a new plot rather than continuing any of these later stuff. So then again, he could, I guess, just be the continuation of those plots, but it feels like it was just kind of wrapped up, you know? Like Superman just did it, and it didn't even take a whole issue for him to figure it out. So yeah, it's a 7.5 just from a quality standpoint, but I wish it just had a bit more pomp and circumstance, I guess. Earth 2 number 6, written by James Robinson, art by Nicola Scott. Last issue we left off with Green Lantern going into the gray and trying to find a way to beat Solomon Grundy, and Terry Sloan wants to nuke DC and a lot of other places in the world. So we open up with Commander Khan, basically about to beat the ever-loving crap out of Terry Sloan for wanting to nuke everything again, because that's just kind of the thing he does. And he's like, no, don't you see it's the only way? And then Khan's like, could we at least tell the new wonders that are down there fighting so that they can escape? And then we see them all fighting against Solomon, Al Pratt, Hawkgirl, and Flash. And they're all just running around trying to keep Grundy away from Green Lantern's body as he's down in the gray, thinking that he's down there trying to solve things, but it turns out that he's just down there cuddling with his dead ex-fiance. So at that point, they get a call up in the Command HQ saying that, oh, cities all over the world, we're losing them, we're running out of time, we have to make a choice. And we see that the heroes are being caught up in Grundy's vines as well. They're unable to escape from him. And then we cut to Green Lantern, who's inside, and he's like, oh man, this feels good. Just cuddle it. Wait, hold on. This isn't real. I need to remember this isn't real. And then, like, it pushes again to be like, no, it's totally real. And he's like, yeah, no, it's totally real. So I go, wait, no, you're doing it again. And so finally his ring burns bright enough, and he blasts away the image of Sam and starts talking to the gray. And it's like, is that the best you got? You think it's just going to be enough to overcome me? And it's like, well, it kind of was for a little bit there. But either way, you can't beat Grundy. Like, not even we can beat Grundy. It's just like, yeah, no, I'm sure. Anyway, you already told me how I could beat him, so I'm going to go. Bye. So then we get one last image in the Command HQ, and it's Commander Khan's, I guess, home of... It says Patna, Kolkata, and Varanasi. I don't know what country that is, but... regardless, it's there. And for some reason, Sloan really draws attention to the fact that Khan was adopted, which I'm mentioning because it might come up later, but I don't see how it applies. But anyway, they've already fired off the nuclear missiles. They're on their way. They're heading to DC. It's their only chance. So at that point, Grundy's about to make his way to Green Lantern. Lantern kicks out of it, and he's like, ha, the gray is done, Grundy, and so are you. And he just grabs Solomon Grundy and starts flying off into space. And as they get farther and farther away, all the vines start to, like, deteriorate a little bit. And Flash and Hawkgirl are like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's all we needed there. So what do we do now? And Hawkgirl's like, well, I mean, we have Al Pratt here, and now that Grundy's gone, that means he's going to go back to his original mission, which is, oh, shit. And then immediately he is coming after Kendra, saying like, oh, I have my orders, I will catch you, you can't run forever. But Flash holds her and then runs like super far away really fast, so she can run forever. So then up in space we see Grundy and I'm blanking on his name, but Green Lantern. They are fighting like up in the upper atmosphere, and Grundy's like, haha, you're getting weaker as you get further from plant life. And he's like, oh, is that really a thing? Is that a thing that's going on here? Okay, well, that sucks. And then he looks down and sees the missiles heading for DC. And he's like, okay, Grundy, just chill for a second. And he keeps them in an arm's length and uses his ring to grab the missiles and throw them into, like, deep space. And he's like, all right, those are done. And now with the final bit of my energy, goodbye, Grundy. And he blasts Grundy to the moon. And then he starts falling down to Earth. And he's like, well, here's a question. As I get close to Earth, will my ring recharge, or am I just going to fall to my death? He doesn't get to find out, though, because Hawkgirl intervenes and grabs him, saves his life. And at that point, the Command HQ is just like, hey, Grundy's gone. All the vines, can we call up the missiles? And they're like, the missiles were just thrown into deep space. Like, they've just managed to redirect them. We don't know how. And Khan turns to Sloan like, oh, hey, look at that. Looks like your plan sucked. And Sloan's like, oh, yeah, guess it kind of did. So at this point, military meets up with Pratt, and it's just like, yeah, no, I will find you, Hawkgirl, even if I go to the ends of the earth. And then Flash, Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl all meet up. And basically just saying like, okay, so how'd you beat him? It's just like, easy, I put him on the moon. See, the Gray, if we managed to actually kill Grundy, somehow, the Gray would be able to then start another avatar. But because I left Grundy alive, but so far away from Earth that he can't do anything, nobody can do anything. We're at a stalemate. So, yeah, just no more going to the moon. And it's like, all right, cool, good idea. However, the planet has been decimated. Everything is dead. What do we do now? And Green Lantern takes his ring and just be like, I'm kind of just rolling off instinct, but this seems like the right thing to do. And he puts his ring into the planet Earth and says, like, that's like a kick start. It's not going to, like, happen all at once, but the Earth will heal. And it's like, all right, cool. So we're the new wonders, huh? Like, we could be the new Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman trio sort of thing going on. We could save the world. And Green Lantern immediately was like, yeah, here's the thing. Flash, you were warned by the god Mercury about something big coming. I was warned by the same thing from the ring. And I don't really need either of you. Like, I know my limits. I'm trained with the ring now. And I kind of just did that whole last part single-handedly. So I'm out. Goodbye. Alan Scott. That's his name. So at that point, Alan just leaves. And Hawkgirl and Flash are like, what a dick. What an absolute dick. And it's just like, all right, well, what do we do now? As they look around and see that flowers and grass are already starting to regrow. And that's where we leave off. This was a solid first arc. I think it did a good job of setting up, a couple new heroes, getting to their thing, setting up the state of the world. I like how they haven't really developed Flash that much. They've given a little bit to Hawkgirl and Al Pratt, who I think it's the Atom. I think that's his name. Atom Smasher? One of the two. Regardless, Green Lantern is, of course, the breakout star from this. He's the one who's getting the most attention and is given the most central importance, and I like it. I think it's a solid start. Obviously, we'll explore more of the team as it expands and different things are needed for them. I kind of... obviously, in the end, they're all going to end up teaming up, so it's just one of those things of meta reading it like, oh, yeah, they're not a team. Oh, I wonder how long that'll last. But this is a different Earth. It genuinely could last a while of them not being a team. So we'll see what happens as it continues. Overall, I'm going to give it I'll give it a 7.5. And a lot of it just comes down to, I like the ingenuity of how they've dealt with it. Where it's just like, I couldn't kill him, but he needs to be on Earth. So I just put him on the moon. That was pretty smart. I think it's a decent way of dealing with it. I didn't see it coming. So... yeah, no, a solid read overall. I like Earth 2 as an opening act here. I'm looking forward to seeing how we continue on with it. And it could just be a nice little branch to the DC universe. So overall, 7 for this. World's Finest number 6, written by Paul Levitz, art by George Pérez and Kevin Maguire. Last issue was the end of an arc, so whatever. This issue picks up in Gotham City, and Huntress is breaking into a Wayne Tech building because she needs more money in order to get a new identity built again. And she keeps on saying, I don't like this city. This is not the Gotham I grew up in. This place is different, and I feel like the other Bruce Wayne is just watching me the whole time I'm here. But anyway, she busts into the computer and she's like, all right, I only need $3 or $4 or $5 million, so I'll just transfer that out real quick. And as she's about to do so, the whole system starts crashing, and she's like, that ain't good. And as she turns around, she is immediately attacked by Damian Wayne Robin, who's just like, we know that you've been breaking into these Wayne Tech systems and stealing our money, so why would we allow you to continue? You were very careless about that. And at that point, Huntress chimes in. She's like, yeah, careless. I've already deduced your identity, dude. I know all about you. And maybe that's what's wrong with this world, is a Robin like you can exist. And just okay, well, let's fight. And he just throws some light little explosives at her. But then we cut over to Power Girl, who she is currently up in space searching for a satellite. She finds one that's owned by Galaxy Communications. And just cool, I'm just going to borrow a little bit of solar power from this in order to run my radar scanner thing that I built that basically just scans the Earth looking for any sort of energy signatures that match the apocalyptic tech. And she takes it and she immediately zooms back down to Earth. And of course, as she's zooming down, comes in a bit hot. And she sees Supergirl flying by nearby. And she's like, oh, I don't want to deal with that at all. Nope, not for me. So she comes in, lands in the ocean, and wouldn't you know it, all of her clothes burned off again. Literally every single issue. But her assistant is there with a change of clothes and says oh, did you get the thing attached to the satellite? And she's like, yep, totally. Anyway, I'm going to go hop in the jacuzzi. And she's like, well, beforehand, maybe we should check to see if the device is functioning. She's like, fine, whatever. So they go down into an underground lab and see okay, where are the energy signatures for this stuff. And they're like, well, there's a whole bunch in Japan because of that thing you fought last arc. And she's like, yeah, we know about that one. What else we got? And she's like, nothing. There's nothing really anywhere else on the planet. And he's like, all right, well, just keep trying. I'm going to go hop in the hot tub. But then the assistant interrupts her again and says, like, the Huntress is kind of being attacked by Robin right now. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll deal with that. So we cut back over to the battle between them. And Damian keeps on reacting like, you fight really similarly. Were you trained by Batman? And Huntress is just like, okay, well, I maybe have let a bit more out than I mean to. And Damian's like, there's also traces of Catwoman in there too. Where are you coming from? And she's like, all right, well, I'm not going to continue from this. And Damian manages to get the upper hand on her just for a second, lands a few punches, and they just keep on going back and forth, like less with fists and more with words of just like, you remind me of Batman. It's like, so do you. You have his eyes. So do you. This is weird. Did we just become best friends? No, they're still hating each other. And they keep on saying like how because Damian was Batman's only son, Huntress calls out like maybe that's why he had such a hard time finding a good Robin. And so they're about to start fighting again. And as they get into it, Huntress gets pushed over the edge of a building, takes Damian down with her, and they both land in a dumpster. And at that point, like, Damian's had enough, and he's like, I'm the one who's suitable to become Robin. I deserve this uniform more than anyone else. Even if you are some bastard child of Batman, you will never get the symbol of Robin. That is me. I am Robin. And then Power Girl, who's finally showed up, just kicks him in the butt and like gets him off and just like, well, not in my book. So then Damian's like, all right, you guys are strong, but like you guys have been stealing millions from us every single week. And Huntress is like, whoa, hold on now. I stole millions when I first got here like several years ago. And yeah, I was about to top off, but like I have not been stealing millions every week. And Damian's like, okay, I believe you. So where do you guys come from? And Huntress is like, you know what? Yeah, sure. I'll tell you. It'd be nice to tell somebody this, especially someone that's kind of in my family. So then we can work together and figure out who's stealing our money. And then there's just a one-page thing in here of the satellite that was scanning for the energy. A portal opens up near it. Some energy comes out. It fizzles out the device and then disappears. So that's already taken off the table. Okay, so I enjoy the idea that we're finally getting more ingrained into the larger universe. We're getting the thing of, they're meeting the counterparts on Earth. I guess it's Zero. I enjoy that. I think that's been a long time coming here. Yes, you need to take the first arc and get the characters situated and whatnot, but I think that it is finally time of, let's get her to meet Batman, or at least some of the Bat family. The reasoning for it of, someone's stealing millions from Bruce Wayne, when like everyone here knows who Bruce Wayne is, it's just kind of like, does anyone really care? Like, whatever. I don't feel like it's that big of an inciting incident, but it can lead to bigger things. I'm not that pressed about it. The reason Power Girl's here seems pretty weak, but honestly, she just seems to tag along with whatever Huntress's story is, so we'll go with that. Overall, though, I'd probably give this one like a 6.5, mainly just from the fact of the Power Girl thing. While it seems to be building towards something bigger, it's taking up these pages of just like, oh, look what Power Girl's up to try to get back off planet, and then it's just kind of not going anywhere. I don't feel like we're building to something bigger with that. It just feels like it being a minor roadblock over the story that's actually going on at any time. So, yeah, 6.5 for this, and I guess we'll see how Damian interacts with his half-sister from a different universe. It's complicated. GI Combat number 6, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Howard Chaykin, or at least the part of Haunted Tank is. So last issue we had Captain Jeb Stewart get visited by a teleporting haunted tank, and he has to go and save his grandson Scott, who is also a soldier and has been captured by enemy combatants, and he does so at the end of the last issue. So this issue, we open up Jeb's piloting the tank, talking to his old war buddies, but then he's like, oh, wait, my bad, you guys are all dead, and I'm sitting here in a haunted tank. Says he's just firing upon all of these terrorists that are the ones that took Scott captive. And as they keep on making their way through, it's like, all right, we got to clear a path for the tank, shoot anything that is on the cliffs because the tank can't shoot up that high, and they try to get everybody inside the tank in the meantime. One of the guys is shot, forget what his name is, but they roll him down in there, and then they try getting the other guy up, and it's 3 guys total. 2 of them get shot and are put inside of the tank, and Scott and Jeb Stewart are the only ones that are left. And one of the terrorists has like a rocket launcher. He fires at the tank. The tank manages to perfectly shoot a shot back to explode the rocket in midair. And Scott's like, wow, that's incredible. And then the tank takes out the terrorist as Scott lowers himself down. I'm just like, look, we got to get to a base. We got to find some place with medical help so I can save my guys here. And Jeb's like, they're already dead. The tank is telling me they're already dead. We've got a bigger mission to do right now. The general says so. And Scott is immediately not having it. He's like, cut the general crap. I'm going to save my men. They're what's more important right now. Meanwhile, the terrorist is about to fire another shot at them. And the tank literally just chases them down and is about to shoot him, but then Scott yells out like, stop the tank. He pops out the top and he's like, 15 minutes ago, I was about to die on my knees with my men. How would you like to live without yours? And he shoots the guy's kneecaps out as they drive away. So then they reach this little desert oasis thing, and the men are dead. Like, obviously they're not okay. They're gone. And Scott's like, all right, we got to bring them back stateside. We need to give them a funeral. Like, their families are going to be missing them. And Jeb's like, that's not part of the plan. The general's saying that we got to go take the tank, and it's got to be, we got some mission somewhere else that we're needed for. And Scott is just like, Grandpa, for God's sakes, you're crazy. I don't want to hear about the general. I don't want to hear about your haunted tank. None of this is a thing. Like, I just want to go home and take care of my unit. And he's like, we don't have a choice, Scott. This is what we're picked for. This is our destiny. This is the opportunities that have been handed to us. We got to take the bodies. We got to put them in this oasis to poison the water supply of anyone who's trying to follow us. And then we got to do whatever the general says. And he's just like, fine, Grandpa, fine, whatever, sure. So then we get the backstory of the tank from Jeb himself. And it turns out that there was an old, I want to say Union, but it could have been Confederate general, that is basically the spirit of their family. It was the great-great-grandfather or whatever. And the general is a ghost that during World War II was keeping Jeb's unit like safe. He was watching over them as like a guardian angel sort of thing. And as they were, Jeb's unit was in charge of basically trying to find the mystical stuff that Hitler was going after. So they ended up fighting things like dragons and Nazi zombies and whatnot. And yeah, it just got a little bit crazy because in the end, the general ended up possessing a tank, and that was the haunted tank that watched over them. But in the end, like, the tank itself was not the weirdest thing, as they were fighting like Viking gods and Valkyries and Nazi robots. Like, it got a little bit crazy until eventually they came and found the point where Hitler's magic box was hidden, which I guess is probably the Ark of the Covenant. But regardless, they managed to stop Hitler from doing whatever he was going to do from the mystical side of things. So, yeah. And Scott, he's already pissed off. He's just like, enough. We've just been rolling around aimlessly. You haven't even been driving. Like, we've just been moving around aimlessly, wasting gas, not even going anywhere. What are we even doing? And he's like, oh, we never run out of gas. The general takes care of that. And we got to keep on, find a way to keep the treads going. And before Scott can really even say anything, the tank makes a noise, and all of a sudden they are teleported basically either to the North or South Pole, probably North Pole, and an entire like laser grid goes off and starts firing off missiles at the tank. And after a while, it dies down, and Scott hops out, and he's like, all right, let's see what's going on around here. And as they look outside, they see that not only are the drones all Nazi drones, there's a wheel. A giant, I mean truly huge, war wheel with a Nazi emblem on the side coming after them. Yep, that's the story. This book is something else. This book is just like, all right, you guys didn't like it when we played War Story Straight with Men of War. So now we're just going to do off-the-wall crazy stuff and see how you like that. And I got to tell you, it's okay. It's not bad. I don't know. I think that there is an interesting story to be told here. Next issue is actually the last issue of this. And I feel like it was just a little bit rushed. I don't feel like there's enough going on. I mean, it could prove me wrong in the final issue. I think that it is still building towards something, but it is such a, the first issue just spent the entire time of like, oh, this tank is coming to get this guy. And then very quickly in the last page, the guy got his grandson. And then this whole thing, it's just like, oh, we're spending the entire issue talking about like how the tank works and like what it's doing. And the grandson doesn't believe it or whatever. And then in the last page, it's like, oh, now they're in the Arctic fighting a war wheel. It's just very much a pacing issue over the whole thing. Art-wise, it's fine. It looks fine. Yeah, it's just, I feel like this wanted to tell a larger story, but each issue is forced to do a very specific thing, and then the actual plot progression is relegated to the last couple pages. So, yeah, it's okay. It's not great, but it is fun. I will say that. It's a fun little story. So overall, I'll give it a 6. I think that it has enough flaws that it does bring it down significantly, but I'm having fun with it, if that counts for anything at all. Stormwatch number 14, written by Peter Milligan, art by Will Conrad and Cliff Richards. Last issue we left off with the demon Etrigan being summoned in London and seemingly killing Midnighter. And this issue picks up basically in that same spot where Apollo's like, you killed him. Why'd you gotta do that? And Etrigan's like, oh, well, I did it because it makes you feel sad, and that's pretty much all I do anything for. And Etrigan immediately tries to take off and be like, yes, I'm going to take over this world. Also, have you noticed I'm a bit of a poet? I'm not going to try to do the rhymes, but regardless, he's rhyming a lot of the time here. But as he starts to take off, he gets a bit dizzy, crashes down the earth, and he's just like, okay, maybe I'm not at full strength yet, but don't you laugh at me. How dare you laugh at me? And he starts trying to spit out his fire, and it doesn't quite work. And he's like, okay, something's definitely wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. But regardless, I just will still smite you. And Apollo now has switched from grief to anger as he unleashes a big blast at Etrigan. And Etrigan's like, oh, wow, that's like really hot. Like layer of hell level of hot. So if I wasn't a demon, I wouldn't be able to deal with that. And we get the whole backstory from Etrigan's perspective of how he led a revolt against Lucifer. Lucifer knew it was going to happen and just wanted to humiliate Etrigan, so he did it anyway. And then cursed him by getting into a deal with Merlin to have him bond to a human, aka Jason Blood. That's a whole thing. So then he was buried somehow. It literally just says, like, all the things that happened leading up to Demon Knights, then the events of the book Demon Knights, and then, quote, finally someone tricked me again and incarcerated me below ground. So yeah, that happened. So anyway, Etrigan and Apollo are getting ready to fight. Apollo's like, no, I shouldn't have used such a blast, so much energy, and all those bystanders nearby. And finally Etrigan's enough power that he's able to unleash the Hellfire Blast at Apollo. Apollo puts up a shield. Meanwhile, the kid who summoned Etrigan last issue is still, like, around, and he's like, geez, I summoned a demon. Oh, gosh, this is all my fault. Then, as Apollo's doing, like, a beam struggle thing with Etrigan, Midnighter comes to, and he's like, geez, all right, what's going on now? And Apollo's like, you're alive! And immediately gets blasted because he got distracted. So then Etrigan's like, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and attack. God, something's messing with my head. And it turns out the other members of Stormwatch all come in. And they're all getting ready to fight. And this is like, all right, does anybody know who this guy is? And it's like, nope, no idea. But I'm asking the city. And that's Jack Hawksmoor asking. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's Etrigan. He used to work with Demon Knights. Madame Xanadu imprisoned him underground here. And it's like, oh, cool. Does he know that Madame Xanadu did it? And it's like, not yet, but it's probably going to bubble up to the surface at some point. It's like, hey, by the way, Stormwatch was once called Demon Knights, right? And it's like, yeah, it was centuries ago. Why? It's like, well, I think this might be our oldest possible foe. So that's an issue. So then we cut over to Avalon, aka the realm of the Shadow Lords. And remember last issue that Harry, what's-his-face, the bad guy from like the first arc, he was going to impersonate one of the Shadow Lords and basically use it to rule Stormwatch. And so he's doing that now. He shows up in front of the other Shadow Lords and he's like, behold, I am your lost brother. I was kept in like a Mayan thing, but regardless, I've come to my senses that we messed up severely with how we run Stormwatch. Allow me to educate you. So anyway, back to the fight. We see that they're throwing half of London at him. And Midnighter and Apollo flirt for a little bit, just being like, oh, hey, I'm so glad you're safe. And he's like, I'm glad you're safe too. Wow, it's like we both care about each other. And then during the fight, Engineer calls up Jenny and is just like, Jenny, I need you to do some magic hoo-ha quantum thing in order to stop anybody from seeing us literally tearing up London. And she's like, well, I can make like a bubble of dark radiation. And Engineer's like, cool, do it. And he's like, but it'll cause like birth defects and cancer and all the people around. And Engineer's like, I genuinely don't care. Secrecy is the #1 priority. Do it. And so she makes the bubble. And they all start fighting in it. And Midnighter reveals that his powers don't work, like his powers of like prediction or whatever, on magical entities, but he's still able to land some solid punches on Etrigan as long as he's thinking about it. And then Jenny just keeps on complaining, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And Engineer's like, suck it up, Buttercup. So at that point, Jack and Midnighter start going towards Etrigan. Etrigan sees the kid who summoned him and just be like, oh, well, because of some magical rules, the kid who summoned me, I'm able to possess his body. So I'm just going to do that. And so he jumps into the kid's body, takes off. Nobody even notices that he did that. But they're like, all right, well, he's gone. Jenny lets down the bubble because she's like, I don't even care if you're angry at me. Like, that was bad. That was something we shouldn't have done. And Engineer starts looking through the files for Etrigan. And she's like, that's weird. I'm coming across locked files. I've literally never seen a locked file before. And she looks over towards Midnighter and Apollo, who are like getting a little bit cozy with each other. And she's like, you know, you guys went AWOL last issue. You didn't tell us where you're going to be. So, new rule. No inner office romances. Okay? Final. And they all make their way back to the Eye of the Storm. And Jenny basically chews out Engineer, just like, ever since you swallowed that devolver like 4 issues ago, you've been acting like a real dick. And Engineer's like, I've been acting great. You suck. So at that point, the Shadow Lords arrive, aka specifically Harry, and it's just like, hey guys, Shadow Lords here. We've been thinking about taking Stormwatch in a change of direction. Where is everybody else? And on the final page, we see Midnighter and Apollo are talking, and they're just basically like, they can't keep us from loving each other. We could just get out of here. We could just leave. Using our powers, they wouldn't be able to track us down. And Midnighter's like, yeah, so I'm kind of a psychopath, in case you didn't know. And Stormwatch really adds some real structure to my life. So I think I kind of need to stay here at Stormwatch. So, yeah. And Apollo's like, oh, guess that's a no then. And then that's where we leave off the issue. So I don't know why we're doing this. Here's what my theory is, at least, and we'll see if it results in such. I think that Demon Knights is close to wrapping up. It's got a few more issues on its run. I think they're going to end it by getting rid of Etrigan. I think that's going to be the end of the arc, and it's going to result in them being buried underground somehow. So be it. I think that this arc is mainly just for the purpose of they want Etrigan back in the DC universe and realize that they needed an explanation as to how he came back. But here's the thing. No, you don't. He could just be around. The spell could just fail at some point over the 1,000 years. Like, it's not even a thing. So, I don't know. This whole arc felt a little bit just for the purpose of getting Midnighter and Apollo not only closer, but then driving a wedge between them at the same time. I feel like the Etrigan thing was just whatever. Like, who even cares? It's not important. So, overall, the arc is a bit iffy. The issue itself is shaky in its own right, just because, like, characters are doing things and then immediately just saying, like, but I don't want to do that. Like, there was one point where Etrigan was saying, like, oh, yes, and you'll tell I'm quite the poet. I'm good at rhyming. But then during the part where he's recounting his history, he says how he was cursed to rhyme. So it's like, and that doesn't even fit with what we know in Demon Knights. That was just a thing of his rank of demon tended to rhyme. Like, overall, it's a mess of an issue. I don't dislike it in terms of it being a interesting story I think they're trying to tell, but I don't know. It's just a bit shaky overall. So overall, I'm going to give this like a 6. It's got some serious issues to it. And I don't quite feel like it has a feel of where it wants to go yet, but we'll see where we get to. Yeah, no, it's just nothing more to say. Just a little bit of a mess. Dial H number 6, written by China Miéville, art by David Lapham. This is kind of just an interlude issue where we just get a little bit of a recap / moving forward as to what we're doing with the book. And the entire premise is that Nelson and Manto, I forget her actual name, I think it's Roxy, I could be wrong. Anyway, Nelson's used the dial to turn into a hero. They're sharing the dial in like a custody agreement sort of way. Each of them have a strict back and forth in turns. And Nelson just happened to roll into Chief Mighty Arrow, which is a super duper racist stereotype of like Native Americans. And basically Manto's telling him like, you're not going out like that. Like, yeah, sometimes you roll a dud. You're not going out like that. And he's like, oh, come on. What if there's like a terrorist threat? It's like, yeah, no, if people's lives are in danger and you're literally the only one who could save them, by all means, go on out and save them. But like, you're not just going out to patrol like that. And he's like, psh, why not? I am a mighty big heap of trouble for them. It's like, big heap of trouble. Do you hear yourself, man? It's like, yeah, okay, that was pretty bad. This is a little bit racist. And as Manto looks out her window, she sees that there is a horse with wings on the lawn, and it's like, yeah, this comes with the thing. And so she goes out trying to cover Wingy with a blanket, and Nelson's just like, oh, Wingy, fly off, explore. I'll call you if you need help or anything. And Wingy just goes off, I guess. We never actually get to see Wingy in that situation. But then, Roxy, she's like, look, here's the thing. I used to keep photos of all of my old ones, and I have this dossier that I call the Refusenick dossier, which is just, these are the worst. These are the ones that if I ever rolled into, I would just sit at home until it wore out, and then I'd do something else, because they are genuinely just too bad. And some of the names we get here are Dr. Cloaca and Kid Torture. So, yeah, not the best. And at that point, he's like, yeah, okay, I get it. But if people are in danger, and she's like, yeah, people are in danger, go save them. But they're not. Just sit and wait, and then we'll see. And it's like, fine, whatever. So he just sits there watching the news, trying to figure out if there's anything he can do. And over the course of this, they just keep on going back and forth talking. And he's asking Roxy if she can make him a sandwich or whatever. And he's like, yeah, don't get used to that. Like, you know just how to push your luck. And Roxy explains, I wear a costume not only for the purpose of like my own identity or whatever like that, but so that when I roll into some of these iffier ones, like I can still go out. I can still do something. I don't have to worry about looking racist. And apparently recently she rolled into one called Electro Cutie, which was like a scantily clad woman with electric powers. And it's just like, yeah, I put on the outfit for that one because it's worth it. And she talked about how one time she got a power called the Prime Mover, which was just like an ultra powerful one, to the point where she didn't even feel the need to wear her costume. But then afterwards, her memories were all scrambled. She spent too much time in there, and she managed to, get a bit mixed up in the head, which is something that decided, like, yeah, no, I always need to be wearing Manto. So anyway, they're watching TV, and then there's a fire, and he's like, oh, there are people in there. And quite literally, it is a fire at the neonatal ward at the hospital, where they also happen to have a bunch of young puppies for the newborn babies. And so he's about to rush out, but it turns out it was a news report from like an hour ago. So everything's fine. He doesn't need to run out. So then they talk, about everything they did over the past couple weeks, how they beat back the void things and all that stuff. And they've been looking to try to figure out this other guy named O, who just swooped in with that dial and managed to take their other dial away with them. So still trying to figure that out. And how they can share this one dial while Roxy's looking for another dial on the news. So then on the news, they see that there is a World Peace Summit that's being held up by terrorists. Like literally a nun is being held at gunpoint and it's just like, this one's live. I have to go out there and help. This is a job for Chief Mighty Arrow. When all of a sudden on the news, the terrorists start getting literally crapped on. Like just piles of poo are falling out of the sky. And it turns out it's Wingy, the winged horse, that is just literally craps on them and then flies away and literally saves the day that way. And it's just like, all right, I guess that one's taken care of. So at that point, Nelson starts to doze off a little bit, and he immediately shoots two because apparently falling asleep while you are dialed into a hero is like a mental super no-no, because you'll be having the dreams of these heroes, and some of them have seen some real messed up stuff, so it really gets to you. So yeah, anyway, they're just talking about, again, when they dialed in, they didn't see anybody on the line, but they know there was that shadow from before, that thing that was waiting for them that they saw during their last fight, so they're still trying to figure that out. But then finally, giant fight starts up on the news. They see this robot's attacking them. Nelson's like, come on, police, you can do this, you can do it, and they're just no match for it. It's like, all right, this is it. It's finally my time. I'm finally... I have to go out there. People are getting hurt, regardless of if it's PC or not. And as he's about to step out, his dial wears off, and he turns back into Nelson. And at that point, Roxy picks him. She's like, you remember, it's each of us get one turn back and forth. We had a strict rule about that. I'm sorry you struck out, but rules are rules. So she dials into something, and she says, I'll go deal with that. I'll be right back. And when I get back, I think I just found another dial. So... yeah, that's where we leave off. It was a hell of a fun issue. Just see, like, literally just stuck at home, wanting something to happen, and then just talking about, like, yeah, no, sometimes the dial sucks. And the way, like, Wingy coming in and saving the day, I loved it. This was a fantastic one. After all the confusion of this previous arc, just to sit down and just take a breather, literally a breather issue, and just be like, yep, sometimes you roll into things that are not okay, and what are you going to do with those moments? So overall, I give this one, I'm going to give it an 8. The only thing that's keeping me from like an 8.5 is the fact that it was so, like, it was just a recap issue for the most part. Only that last page was like, I found a new dial or something like that, setting up the future thing. But it was just fun the whole way through. I really cannot overstate that. So yeah, 8 for this. I'm really looking forward to the second volume because that wraps up this trade. So see what Dial H has in store for us in the future. And that's it. That's all the comics came out from DC Comics this November 7th, 2012. And as I said at the beginning, hopefully shorter episode. I don't actually know how long these things are until I go to edit them, but I get a feel for it, and this definitely feels under the 2-hour mark, considering the fact that I haven't broken out in a cold sweat yet. But yeah, overall, decent enough episode. Let's go ahead and tell you about the comics coming out next week. Next week, November 14th, 2012, we have, of course, 14 comics, including the number 14 issues of Batgirl, Batman, Batman and Robin, Superboy, Green Lantern Corps, Deathstroke, Grifter, Suicide Squad, Legion Lost, Demon Knights, and Frankenstein. Additionally, we have the number 6 issue of The Ravagers and the number 2 issues of Team 7 and The Phantom Stranger. Out of all of those, I don't know, probably Batman is the biggest thing. Although we do have a tie-in to Hawkman Wanted in Deathstroke. We have a tie-in to Rise of the Third Army in Green Lantern Corps. Superboy, I believe, is Hell on Earth. There's a lot going on event-wise. I haven't actually managed to keep up with it, but trust me, we are locked and loaded for all of that. So, that pretty much does it for me. If you for some reason skipped over the beginning of the episode and yet are listening to the end, why? I don't understand that concept at all, but I just wanted to mention one more time, and for the last time, I have a new show over on Mild Fuzz Movies. That is The Collector's Cut. We were talking about Dirty Harry, and that is the one that is out so far. So if you've ever wanted an hour and 45 minutes of two guys talking about an hour and a half long movie, well, there you go. That's it. That's exactly what we do. Overanalyzing it to death. Anyway, let me get through the required stuff here. We have a Twitter, if you have any thoughts on the comics I've read this week, next week, any week. And that Twitter is at DC Comics Podcast, all one word, at DC Comics Podcast. I'm going to go ahead and plant my flag here. We will not be paying $8 for that little blue check mark. Additionally, we have a Patreon for anybody who has some spending money, and that is Mild Fuzz TV. All one word, Mild Fuzz TV. Get some early bonus content and other exclusives. That's a better thing to spend $8 on. Spend $8 on that if you're going to spend $8 anywhere. I'm not saying you have to, but you have to. I'm moving exclusively to there. No, that's a horrible business strategy. Never do that. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching and listening, however it is you consume this content. I hope to see you in the next episode. And as always, try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.